Alright, guys, and right now, we're going live. Everyone say hey to the internet. What's going on? Hey.
Hey, people.
Hello.
Far out, man.
Far out, man.
Dude, we're not in the 70s.
Alright.
Cowabunga, dude.
Alright, so today's show, Andy is going out the window, and now Shadow is taking over.
What?
Today we're talking about mysticism.
But we love
What
Andy.
is the esoteric?
But we love Andy.
Both Shadow and Andy at the same time.
Who's Shadow?
You just call yourself Shandy.
Hey, what about Shandy?
Alright, let's go back. What?
The handy dandy
Here, what?
Shandy.
Alright, so let's think about this. Let's go around the room and give us an introduction about what in the world is mysticism, and have we ever experienced the mysteries of the universe in this world, especially Michael, who is eating a giant cookie right in front of my face, and I want some yum-yums over here.
Alright.
Michael. Alright, Stonehead, how about you try first?
Well, this isn't a cookie, this is a ciabatta.
Merlin.
I'm sorry, this thing is dripping. You're gonna have to give me a minute.
Okay, Michael, do you want to talk about the mysteries, or like about like what do we know about it? Like especially like the mystical traditions, like the Merlin mystery schools.
Yeah, I'm gonna go wash my hands real quick.
Yeah, that one. A sticky short.
It's pretty sticky.
It's sticky.
Hey, look, bubble wrap.
So mysticism, huh?
Oh my guys.
We get the Merriam-Webster definition by Michael Sparks.
Alright, so yeah, like can you Tony, can you give the audience an overview of what mysticism is?
Alright, well, I was going to look at the Merriam-Webster definition just to keep in honor with Michael.
Okay, Mike, come on. If you need to speak up.
Okay, I have an answer. Oh, he left.
Okay, good. Sorry,
Yes.
that was kind of annoying, just a little bit. So I would welcome him. I would welcome him anytime. That was definitely uncalled for. Muting everyone.
He just came out of nowhere.
Wow, he muted me. I was looking at the Merriam-Webster definition, so here we go.
Thank you for picking up on my style, Tony.
Oh yeah, well it's a cool idea. A
It's probably
religious
my
practice
style.
based on the belief that knowledge of spiritual truth can be gained by praying or thinking deeply. The experience of mystical union or direct communion with ultimate reality reported by mystics. A belief that direct knowledge of God, spiritual truth, or ultimate reality can be attained through subjective experience. Mostly what I'm seeing here, and it's pretty much what I agree with, is mysticism is gaining knowledge through intuition. At least in my definition. So, again, the Merriam-Webster definition of that is a religious practice based on the belief that knowledge of spiritual truth can be gained by praying or thinking deeply. I believe, though, that should not say religious practice. I think more accurately it should be a spiritual practice. A spiritual practice based on the belief that knowledge of spiritual truths can be gained by praying or thinking deeply or meditating. So I expounded on the Merriam-Webster definition.
Hey, Robert.
How's it
So-
going, everybody? Y'all doing well
Hey,
this
How you
evening?
doing, man?
Not too bad, not too bad. Just been observing world events. And I kind of asked Andy
There's
earlier
different
if he could
findings.
define mysticism in the context of this particular hangout, because there are several different, definitions of the word.
did you come in while I was giving the definition?
Yeah, I did. It took me a little while to get set up.
Oh, okay. So you heard it then?
Yeah, I heard the latter part of it.
Well, yeah, the latter part of it's probably better because I had to like expound on it because I don't limit it to religion. It's not as much a religion as it is a spiritual practice.
Hmm. Yeah, because there was
Mysticism or
another,
esotericism?
there was
Mysticism.
another definition that had to do with self-delusion and something of that nature, and I was just curious. That's not going to
I didn't see that one.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, guys.
Anyway,
So, good Sherman, I called him on his bullshit.
You said what?
I called that guy on his bullshit.
Well,
On-
you missed an interesting thing with the guy that had the Easter Island head, and then he left, thankfully. So now we're on to mysticism and mysteries.
Ooh.
Yes.
Okay.
I called him on his bullshit, and he left.
And
Well, he
Tony
left a little while. Yeah.
Tony defined it for us, and I'm horrible for not trying to quote it. But Tony could probably,
I can go ahead and repeat it.
yeah.
Let's see. What it does say religious, but I changed that to spiritual on the Merriam-Webster site. It says,
According to Merriam-Webster.
yeah, according to Merriam-Webster, loosely, a spiritual practice based on the belief that knowledge of spiritual truth can be gained by praying or thinking deeply or meditating.
I can dig it.
In this case, I don't think the Merriam-Webster definition is accurate.
For one.
you don't think it's accurate, or you don't think it's
Yeah, well,
broad enough?
Yeah, it's not broad enough because they limit it to just what it actually says is a religious practice based on the belief that knowledge of spiritual truth can be gained by praying or thinking deeply, which I believe there should be meditation in there, and religious should be replaced with spiritual practice.
So maybe Merriam-Webster wasn't a practitioner of mysticism.
Well, no, that's like your like unquote level-minded definition.
That would make sense. I'm just saying you can tell when somebody's like put something in there that like they just heard about, or whether they're talking about something they know about.
But as far as I'm concerned, it's basically whenever you gain intuitive knowledge through like meditation, it's gaining knowledge through an intuitive process.
Yeah, so some sort of
Divination.
self-reflection. Yeah.
Even if you're reflecting as Jehovah, Zeus, Apollo, all of them at the same time.
Right.
But you could also, you could gain knowledge by reflecting on roads. So,
Yeah. Yes. Or you
Now,
can
what
gain
would you
knowledge
say
on
the
reflecting
difference would
just
be in the
about anything.
timelines?
I heard, what was that?
Oh, you can
I'm
gain
sorry,
knowledge.
Robert.
No, that's cool. You can gain knowledge by reflecting on just about everything, and it's something that
Oh, yeah.
the majority of the populace doesn't take the time to do out of their days to analyze and internalize what their experiences have done to them or for them.
Yep. That's a good way to put it.
Now I know mysteries, something that I guess would be like a hidden truth that you're trying to find. So if we're linking these two topics together, are we trying to find, I don't know, are we trying to go over maybe mysteries or things that we have discovered through mysticism on our own, or are we going to, is that what, like I'm trying to figure where we're going to move on to the
Mystery and
definition.
mysticism are very closely
Yeah, they have the same.
synonymous.
So it looks like they have close to the same etymology, which means the study of like where words come from.
Right. Yeah.
I
Etymology.
mean, it would seem like they both have the same root, right?
Yeah.
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 Right?
Let's see if I can come up with. I got a website for etymology.
Yeah, same root word.
Nerd alert.
Mist.
That sounds awesome, and I think
Mist.
I need that website.
Let me see if I can get it.
Oh, wow.
I think it's on my favorites bar.
That's
I've got so
awesome.
many on there.
You
Well, they
can go to Google
they
and just
call
type in
they call Egypt
etymology.
the land of mysteries.
I totally missed that. I caught the
Yeah, I
end
did
of like
too.
one person and the beginning of another.
No, I said
Oh,
they
it's
called
just-
Egypt the land of mysteries.
Ah, okay.
But more often than not, if you want to find out what the etymology of a particular word is, all you have to do is type that word and then origin after it.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. At least in this day and age, anyway.
Yeah.
Provided you have access.
Now, I was going to ask,
Oh.
what's the difference in the timelines versus, say, a mystic or a prophet or a seer or oracle in, say, when they first came out to, say, modern day times?
Michael, I think. Well, could you repeat the question? I think that
Yeah, I
went
didn't-
totally like over my head.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand it either.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me finish chewing.
That would explain it.
Andy, is everything all right?
Okay, so
I think this is
in the
quietest I've ever
timelines,
seen you. Sorry, just kidding.
it was probably the Stonehead guy.
Yeah, really upsetting. It's all good. Respond, don't react. Let that guy's actions leave and just respond to what you want to do.
Oh, that's what they said in the book, right?
Well, I was going to ask something, though, because I think we're really tying in mysteries with mysticism, but if you read the definition of mysticism, or what Tony was discussing about mysticism is it has an element of the spirituality in the widely accepted definition, whereas a mystery is something where it's kind of just saying it's something unknown, it's a question to be asked. And I guess maybe something towards your question, Michael, about mystics and oracles from the past to today, if you think about that, those mystics, I think we're looking for that meaning and looking for that explanation, that spiritual meaning in those mysteries. And since those mysteries have changed from then to today, I mean, there's a lot we could talk about how they've changed. Because, I mean, think about how mysteries have changed from, you know, I don't know, back then.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to just say back then. I wanted to say something a lot more intelligent, but sometimes I have to be kind of blonde. But, you know, think about how
Right.
the questions that we've all asked on the world, and that's exactly why, you know, religion and spirituality has also evolved a lot, and yet hasn't. So, like, you know, what mysteries do we still have to face? And I guess in those instances, that would be how a mystic would have changed / be different. So I guess what would we say about that?
Maybe people that use their imagination back then were looked at as like gods or something, but nowadays, because it's so common, it's just like, oh, you know, he just used his imagination. You know,
I honestly feel like nowadays that's so uncommon for so many people. Like, there's so many people I just want to shake on a normal basis and be like, did you not have a childhood? Do you not have a concept of your own imagination? Like, it boggles my mind.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know
right?
exactly
It's
what
like
you
no
mean.
one ever.
I was just going to jump in and say that link I put over there on the chat box for etymonline.com, it's a pretty decent etymology site as far as finding the basis of what words are, where they come from.
Sweet. Oh,
Like
You can find the origin of swear words.
like mystis is where the base for mystics or mysteries is basically is what it says is one who has been initiated.
well, it comes from mystique. That's awesome.
Mystique.
It's connected with the mysteries.
Wasn't that like one of the X-Men?
Yeah, Mystique is one of the X-Men. But apparently, what is it? Late 14th century, spiritually pertaining to mysteries of faith from Old French mystique. Mysterious, full of mystery.
So pretty much the idea of mysticism is actually derived from mysteries.
Yeah.
So the need for a mystic came from having mysteries. Sorry.
And then from the mystery, it's the M-I-S-T-S or the M-Y-S-T-E-S from mystis, one who has been initiated, and pertaining to occult practices, ancient religions, and so on. So, but yeah, that link I put over there, that'll lead you to the site if you want.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It's awesome.
Appreciate it.
But yeah, to me, whenever they just say, "Well, mystic comes from mysteries," and and mystique, it's like, okay, but what's the M-Y-S-T? You know, where does that come from? That's where, because that's the base of the word, and that's.
Yeah. That's true.
Semantics.
But words, yes, semantics and words isn't everything. It's interesting to use that to, and I just looked in MYST also. Early 14th century, in a theological sense, religious truth via divine revelation, hidden spiritual significance, and mystical truth. Sorry, I can't even speak. So, I almost want to know, which one came first? Did people searching for the answers come first, or did the root word come from the mysteries being there themselves? How do we define, how did we come up with mist itself as a word?
Well,
all right, Jenny, Jenna, here's where, what do you call it, mysteries or came from this human concept where the word mystery, where it's about something hidden deep inside of the reality of whatever's there already. But in terms of finding that reality, like for example, if I were to say, okay, so I made this planet into whatever it is. It's not because some kind of God is making it. It's actually just an imagery of myself doing the same thing. These imageries of representation of us. You get it?
Yeah, I like that explanation a lot, actually.
That's the reason why, if you go, go to the mystery school. That's the funny thing. If you go to any mystery schools, even the shamans, you'll find out that a lot of the Stonehenges and all the mega structures of gods and goddesses and statues and everything, those are all representations of your own consciousness. It's weird. That's the thing that a lot of religions today, they don't get. What is your take on this? What is a god? Or what is an archetype? Because a lot of mystery religions do that.
You want to go to the Merriam-Webster definition?
Please, if you know unreliable, I wouldn't even recommend it for my audience.
No, it's just...
Speak out of experience, man. That makes a lot more sense for it.
It does, but I'm saying that's where they're going to... I mean, that or the Oxford and maybe a Western house, a random house. I forgot what it's called.
Yeah, but again,
that's where they get their definition.
With Andrew, though, because Andrew's saying that we should go with our personal experiences on it as opposed to looking at the actual, words, because the words came from our own feelings of it. It all came from our own feelings. So let's talk about the feelings and how we experience it as opposed to what, civilization has defined it as.
Yeah, words are just
true.
They're just a method of communicating ideas, and so really the
hey,
whole
Bonnie,
idea
what's going on?
Hey.
What's going on?
Hi.
I love your name. I love your name.
Jenna, this is Bonnie. Bonnie, this is Jenna.
Hi, Bonnie. I just
I
want
love
to let you
your
know,
name
my mom
too.
has the. Oh, thank you. My mom has the same name as you, and I always try to nickname her Bon Bon. So I might call you that, and I'm sorry if you don't like it, tell me
Oh
now.
no,
But
I
I love
got
your
over
name.
not liking that in like 3rd grade.
My mother's
I've
name is
never
Bonnie.
called her Bon Bon before.
Yeah, it's quite popular. I don't mind it at all. Actually, it's funny. When I was little, I used to read these books, and I can't remember what they're called. They're like history from the point of view of like someone's journal. So it was like reading a journal. And there was one journal that I read, and the girl always named her journals. So I started naming my journals, and I named it Jenna. And I would every day be like, "Dear Jenna," and I have
Oh, wow.
journals from like
That
when
is
I'm
super funny.
3rd grade, like, "Dear Jenna." So I have a
Well, I'm
connection.
finally here, so you know.
Synchronicities. Three people in a conversation. My mom, her name is Bonnie, and Jenna's
That's
mother's
awesome.
name is Bonnie. Your name is Bonnie. There's the synchronicities. It's insane.
Man, this is ridiculous.
It's not even a popular name.
It used to
No.
be.
Yeah.
I decided people quit naming their kids that after Bonnie and Clyde because they were like, "Oh, I don't want to name my kid after a famous bank robber."
Then again, that is one of the main reasons. That is one of 2 reasons why I want to name my daughter Bonnie if I ever have one. Way the
And
mind works.
Actually, I think the name Bonnie is kind of cute because it sounds like bunny.
Oh yeah. Oh, and by the way,
I'm trying
Bonnie.
to figure out what my spiritual business is going to be called, and I'm just like, Bonnie! I don't know what the heck to call it.
Oh wait, Bonnie. We forgot to introduce ourselves. Oops.
Uh-oh. Let's do drop
Bonnie.
it.
Oh boy. There are things that on this show we will never get used to, like introducing ourselves to our audience. It's just
Well, it
ridiculous.
doesn't have to be an introduction. It can just be a drop-in of how your week is, how you feel in this exact moment in time, what you feel like. You know?
Is that part of authentic relating?
Yes, it is.
All right.
Talking about how you feel in this present moment. Like,
I was gonna say maybe we don't really need introductions because we're all here talking anyway. So, you know.
That, and I'm pretty sure most of us know each other.
well,
Hi,
let me
my
tell you
name is.
also-
For those who've been, I've talked to about it. My mom, she's doing really well, and they said that she might be out of the hospital tomorrow, at the latest a day and a half. So.
Yay!
Yay!
Well, congratulations. I don't know what went wrong, but congratulations. That's awesome.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it is kind of.
Oh my
I think I
God,
sent her
Randy,
some Reiki last night. I think I sent her some Reiki last night.
Awesome.
I heard that. I was scared.
But I'm Tony for nobody who's met.
I guess I should start out. I guess.
Doing
Do you want-
I
or do you want-
was like, well, I was talking, so I'll go ahead and introduce myself while I'm at it.
Okay, so the
I live
secret
in
is...
around, man.
I live in Oklahoma. I've been practicing for
Is there anything you
20
want
years.
to say?
Yeah, go for it. I'm done.
Well, that was quick.
Who's talking?
I
is
say
there
we
anything
start
you want
with
to say?
start from the left and work our way right. I mean,
I just want to say that the secret about introductions and drop-ins is that it's really therapeutic for us to be able to have just a moment to talk about what's up in your world. It's really, it's like a trick to support groups and to communicating effectively and to authentically relating and to feeling good about it. Because we could sit here and talk about all kinds of different things, but if we don't each individually get a chance to drop in and just say what's going on in your world, like we're secretly going to be like, oh, just like wanting this, craving this like attention, you know? Everybody, it just feels good for us to recognize, to be recognized, but also to recognize each other, and it creates a bond, as well as just allowing us to feel comfortable in this space right now. And also it's just really therapeutic for us to be able to have other people listening and recognizing us. So that's why I'm always like introductions, because it's not always to introduce yourself. Like there's more going on here.
Well, my name's Robert Cleaver. I'm a systems.
He's like, I'm ready to be recognized.
Yeah, no, not that. It's just that I'm in a state of conflict right now. Realistically, how far does intent and collective intent affect our reality? And given the circumstances that like I said, I've been observing world events, and all the conspiracy nonsense aside, the attack vectors available for a biological attack in the United States are there. The potential's there. The motive's there. The capacities. It's just a matter of timing, and so focusing on that and the absolute reality that the stage is literally set from a systems point of view. The stage is perfect, but from my ideological standpoint, if intent has any effect on reality, why am I thinking about it? And it just popped into my head earlier this afternoon after a day of research and just kind of perusing.
Oh yeah.
Well,
you could just ask yourself. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't know if we were going to go on introductions. I was going to go off of what he said too, but I'm Jenna. I actually am from Maryland. I know Sherman personally. We became friends when I started working in Washington, D.C., and I, about a year ago, immigrated up to Canada. I am in Edmonton, so I'm really, really far away. And I actually have to agree a lot with what you were just saying, because if you look at it, conspiracies completely aside, even if you don't think of things from like a systems point of view, it's almost like you could feel something's happening, because if you look back in history and you look at all of the major events in history, there's always been a build-up to it, and that build-up is actually happening now. So we don't know what's going to happen, but I've been saying for a while now that something's about to happen, whether it be a biological attack on American soil, or which is one likely possibility, or something that I believe, which is just the U.S. I don't know, declining into a state of chaos, most likely from a revolution against police force. But I agree. I think something's definitely up.
Well, what I'm looking at is the Southwest United States is a massive border control issue, and it doesn't matter what side of the immigration argument you're on. The fact of the matter is, there is a penetrable border, and there's a massive influx of immigrants at that border at the moment. And chemical attacks require, obviously, the agents. And there hasn't been any readily available biological. There hasn't been a source for biological viruses that are easily accessible, and with the border issues and with the traffic, there's already established human trafficking networks that bypass the border entirely. And when you're dealing with the fundamentalism and all of that, all the reasoning aside, the fact is they are angry. They have reason to be angry, and they do want to do damage. And when you're in combat of any kind, and taking action offensively or defensively, strategy is determined by a cost-to-loss ratio. And when you're dealing with suicidal people, in other words, the people who are, have the mental capacity or the ideology required to commit suicide to achieve the ends of their collective, which is more effective, a suicide bomber or a few suicide bombers, or a couple dozen weaponized humans smuggled into the United States via human trafficking rings and strategically placed. Within 3 weeks, it's 3 weeks. It's a time bomb, literally.
Yeah.
And the incubation period allows for massive distribution.
And with the amount of populace and the way that we live our lives so free of disease right now, that nobody, like, I mean, we're not all living in plastic bubbles and the kind of biological agents that could be used. I understand. Yeah, I agree.
Well, there's one that's available right now that you can go and get by accident or, you know, on purpose.
Yeah.
And there are ways to transport it. And there's nothing that we can do about it, period.
I mean,
Period.
the
You
whole
know.
thing I've never really understood, though, is, like, the point of it all. Like, I get it. You know, it's a power kick. It's a major, you know what I mean? It's a major ego boost. But what is the quite literal point of all of it? I mean, you have it until what? It goes out of control and then annihilates us all. Like,
No,
really? Is it worth it?
The United States has long
Right,
been. The United States has long been. Actually, just about every government in history, established government in history, has been in the business of false flag terrorism. It's an undeniable.
Oh yeah,
Undeniable fact. And well,
yeah, I have to agree with you, Robert.
start questioning the existing reality and
Yeah,
existence.
that's the thing, Robert. Like you have, you were right. When you were telling me about like all those moments of concrete, we're actually
I didn't catch that last part.
I didn't either.
going back to we're actually living
propose
in the era of
I thought we were
Babylon.
talking about mysticism now.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's what I was like.
It's a mystery.
Yeah,
but
but then
my intention.
it has a lot to.
What I was getting at was, given the circumstances, would it is it better to focus
esoteric.
on it? Are we sure that
Ruining
intent? Are we sure that intent has anything
No, by
to do?
focusing on it, we just create more of it. I think
Right.
what we need to do is focus on the solution, what we can do to, in a way, counteract that.
And the solution.
Yeah, going back to the Hermetic principles.
Exactly. Yep.
We're
Focus on
spreading
the solution,
awareness.
not the problem.
Hmm.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah,
So
no,
like, that's the question. If we're gonna
Be aware of the problem, however.
I used to
how
work
can you
Be
focus
aware
on
of it, right.
Hermetic
the
principles.
solution? How can you focus on the solution if you're not aware of the problem?
That's why I don't. I used to work for Republic Broadcasting. They're the internationally syndicated radio network that used to host Alex Jones before GCN came on, and I quit working there because they're fear mongers. They really are. And,
Oh, yeah.
And I don't believe in instilling fear in anybody either. But there are things to be afraid of that are, you know, that have legitimate. You understand what I'm saying?
Well,
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I wouldn't call it being afraid of, though. I would
Aware.
aware of.
right.
You know?
Right.
Because I'm aware of a lot of stuff that people might be afraid of, but I'm just aware of it, and I prefer to look for a solution.
Right.
You know, I've looked into quite a bit about the whole New World thing
Well,
and agendas.
And when you get into Agenda 21 and depopulation, it's a perfect scenario. It really
But yeah,
is.
it's exactly a good reason to be aware of it. What's the solution? What can we do about it? Can we?
Right. I mean, people are fucked up enough already. You know,
Yeah.
we need solutions.
I think as far as solutions concerned, I don't know. I think that's where I got on. That's how I ended up on the fringe because I don't think there is a solution. Personally, I believe that this existence that we're in is like essentially boot camp. It's a perfect example of how not to live, to be honest, or how society is not to be structured. You know?
Well, what I would say is, as far as the solution goes, we are the solution. Every human being, in their at their center, has the ability and the want to be unified and harmonious with each other. Maybe not everyone, but to a degree, almost most of them. Whenever you get to a like perfect example is like hurricanes.
Oh yeah.
Even in New York, hey, fuck you, asshole. Pardon if I offended anybody, but that is the way they have their common mentality is. But when it comes right down to it, in the bare bones situation, people will help people.
Yeah.
People will help you.
Well, at birth, you don't have murderers. You don't have infants. You don't have infant murderers. You know, you're a product of your environment, and we like I said about the U.S. earlier, we engage in proxy wars. We created these people.
Not we, they.
They.
I'm not part of that.
Humans.
Okay,
You know,
so
I was never a part of it.
neither was I. You understand what I'm saying?
Okay, my head's are washed to that, but I'm aware of it and I want to do something about it.
Yeah, and discussion is about all we can do about it.
Well, I'm
honestly,
saying, but if we talk about,
You can make
go ahead,
people
Bonnie.
not afraid of it, and
No,
at the
it's
same
Jenna,
time
but-
bring it to
I'm
their.
sorry, I get the voices mixed up. I'm sorry.
So
Go
yeah,
ahead, Jenna.
if you bring it to people's awareness, but tell them not to dwell on it, not to be afraid of it, and think of a solution, at least everybody's focusing on a solution and aware of it.
Right.
And some of the solutions that I've seen is like I mentioned something about a restaurant that John Bon Jovi started, where people go in and if they can't afford to eat, they help with the dishes. There's no prices on the food. People can just pay whatever they can afford for the meal that they're getting, and it's a community thing. I wouldn't call it communism, but it's a community, and I think a community-oriented society is the way for a solution. Like Bonnie says
Right.
quite a bit. You know, buy locally owned, buy locally grown food, support your community, your local community.
One thing that I was going to say, because I actually agree with you a lot, Tony, and we're talking about having a solution to this problem, because we, each and every one of us, can live that solution by how we act, by making the community like Tony explains. But one way that at least I'm hoping to attempt to make my mark on things is that I want to raise awareness. So even though I know that I can't change people, I know that the only thing I can do is change myself and hope to inspire that change in others. And the only way I can inspire that change in others is attempting to make them aware of the same issues and attempting to make them aware of what I'm doing to solve it. And so that's what I intend to go forward doing every day is if the conversation starts, then talking with people and letting them know what my beliefs are and letting them know where I stand and where I hope to go and what I'm doing. And then hopefully they can take from that something that will, if not completely help them revolutionize their lives and try to become more community oriented, then maybe it's going to help them start on their way. I know Sherman was actually instrumental in me becoming aware. So.
Awesome.
I do what I can.
We want to give Sherman a shout out.
Yeah, way to go. Way to stand for what you believe in and live your life as an example, Sherman.
Not even. I actually would have to like reflect it right back to Jenna, because like Jenna's like a really, really big inspiration for me. Because like everybody talks, you know, that wonderful bullshit. Oh, fall in love. You know what I mean? Like travel, move away, and live your life. And like quite literally, like Jenna is like doing that. Like, and it's so awesome.
I gave up a $50,000 a year job with a company that I had a set career, and I was actually going to go up and try to become one of the vice presidents of the company in several years. I knew that was the company I was going to work for the rest of my life, and I gave it all up in a heartbeat for this gentleman right here, love of my life. I introduced him at the beginning, and that's why I moved up to Canada. And now I don't make any money because I can't work yet, but even when I do, I know that I won't be starting out because it doesn't matter to me, and I hope that that story can let other people try to do the same thing, whether it be a person or a
Well, that
hobby.
inspires me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Something
that really is inspirational. Well, one other thing that I thought about as far as solutions go is if you don't support what a company is doing, don't buy their product.
Yeah, that's so very true.
If you don't like how Walmart's treating their employees, don't support them. If you don't like what McDonald's does with the animals or with their employees and how they treat them, don't go there and eat. You know, so you can do that, and just that little bit, you know, if you just stand by that, people pick up on it, and you're living your life by example.
Be the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love the philosophy, but I find myself as such a hypocrite.
Yeah, I ate at McDonald's the other day, but you know it was the only place around at the time, so you have to do what you have to do.
That's horribly unfortunate as a vegetarian. Like, it's the absolute worst conundrum because those two
Well, I'm not a
alien foods.
vegetarian.
No, I was just speaking like for myself. Like, fast food in general is just like harsh, and then there, you've got like chemicals, and you've got like, I don't know what else.
Chemicals.
Well, actually, you know what? I actually am slightly qualified to speak on this a little bit because I studied culinary arts for 4 years. And if you think about what McDonald's did and how they started out trying to bring something to the community that was affordable for everyone and a way to feed your family that was affordable but still giving a family outing. If you look at, I mean, and I don't know about recently, but as much as 3 years ago, if you talked about McDonald's employment history and what they did for people, McDonald's didn't just hire people, they'd give people opportunities to train and actually bring themselves back up in the world or try to make something better of themselves. And they actually promoted that change in their employees any way that they could, considering the fact that, there's still a corporation that has profit margins in mind 24/7, they still did those things. And if you think about the quality of the food, you have to realize the fact that you're not going to be able to get, fresh ground beef and vegetables for $1.50. It's not going to happen. They don't, in my opinion, they don't necessarily lie about it. I mean, they may say that it's better than, what most people think it is. Like I think I saw this one video about McDonald's about what they put in the, what's that?
I said they're definitely deceitful, and that's an issue.
I don't think they want people to know what goes into the food because people would freak out. But at the same time, like I said, if you really tried to put fresh ingredients in the food, you wouldn't be spending $2 on a hamburger. You'd be spending the amount that you spend at Wendy's or Burger King.
It's systemic. They've broken down communities systematically. Nobody goes outside or talks to their neighbors for the most part anymore. They really. They've turned us into a deconnected society, and they were connected to some degree through the digital world, but physically, they've turned us into essentially enemies of we're our own enemies.
Plugged into the Matrix.
Pretty much.
Well, that's just like I saw a picture on Facebook, which that's kind of like hypocritical even talking about it. But I saw a picture on Facebook, and it was like 5 girls sitting there at a beach, on a nice day, blue skies, and they're all standing right next to each other, texting. I mean, come on. You got somebody right next to you you're friends with. Why text to them? I was at a party, a New Year's party, and there was like 8 or 10 chairs there, and of course, awesome. The guy set up an awesome setup as far as lighting and everything, good sound system. Hardly anybody was dancing. Everybody was sitting down, and there was people talking to people 4 or 5 chairs down that were in the same room. It's like, come on, get off your phones. You gotta take 5 steps, people. They're right there. I could show you here. Come here. They're right there, okay? You don't have to text with them. But I think it has to do with them, they're talking about other people behind their back, and they don't want to hear it. They don't say it out loud. But one thing that you mentioned, Jenna, about McDonald's, and I would have to say it about Walmart, too. When they first started out, that's the key point. Like Sam Walton, the guy that started Walmart, he was an awesome guy. He had a good idea for a store being a neighborhood community type situation. And then after he passed on, his sons took over, and then the stockholders took over. And I don't know if that's the same with McDonald's, but I do know it's the same with Walmart. And then it just grew into its own entity, almost like that South Park show. I don't know if you've seen it or not, where the Walmart is alive. But yeah, it became its own entity basically with the stockholders, and they're they about all they really care about now is profit margin.
That's what happens when you allow corporations to become people.
Oh, yeah, I can't stand that.
Their charters were initially meant to be, they were only supposed to be chartered for public interest. It seems like they get chartered for public interest and they're immediately hijacked.
Yeah, that's why if you do ever start a business, don't let it become a stockholder. Don't start selling stock and stuff like that. Yeah, okay, you'll make more money, but you'll lose what that business represents.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I had my first DBA at 18. Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting.
Because I know Sam Walton today. If he knew what Walmart had become, he would freak out. He would want to change it back to what it was before, because that was his whole idea of them, like a mom and pop store, like a general store, a neighborhood general store.
And now it's like the executioner.
Yeah, now it's become the Walmart has become self-aware.
I want to actually bring this back a little bit, because I just looked over and I'm reading what Andy is writing about mysticism, back onto our topic that we were starting on, and I just wanted to say, I actually
all right, so guys,
I think it should be used in psychology. Go ahead.
All right, so here's.
Cut her off, Andy.
Yeah, I know, my smartphone gone on. Like, seriously, my smartphone nowadays has gone haywire ever since the day that I started using Google Hangout and all sorts of crap. Like, my vibration just drops that thing.
I was curious what Jenna was saying about mysticism.
No, I was just bringing it back to what Andy was saying.
Yeah, sure, go for it, but like,
actually.
Yeah,
she was just introducing what Andy was about to say, and he cut her off. That's funny.
Yeah,
it's here in the chat box. Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing, guys. When you brought up the concept of business, it brought up something really interesting right here. You realize that when you start bringing, you know how corporations, they become people, right? It's not just simply like it become a person. It's when you start giving, it was more of like you have a collective consciousness of humans get together, but they have a motive in mind.
It's like, well, they're anthropomorphizing business. It's.
That's the reason why, guys. Like, if you ever run a business in your life, the best advice is, like, you don't get it to a corporation, because half the time you don't even know what it can become.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But like, that's the thing. Like, what if instead of spending our time just arguing about how businesses are being all corrupted, what about like? What happens if we mysticism teach it to the public in a concept like psychology, where if you were to teach it to people, I wonder how would they react to this? How would that make a difference?
Yeah, I read your question about applying esoteric concepts to psychology, and
will you pause and join the conversation?
I think we're headed in that direction to some degree.
I mean, like, it's not just simply esoteric.
It's a monosyllabic answer.
What? Yes.
It just comes down to empathy. That's all. If you feel you're a person that.
Okay, so when it comes to esotericism, it's not just simply about you guys teaching the concept to people or doing anything. It's about applying it in such a way that, like, for example, in psychotherapy, if somebody, for example, have PTSD, you don't just simply just talk to them. You go and retrieve their soul somewhere. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, one thing that I've considered about as far as mysticism goes is, if anything, just bringing people back to the mysticism of the religion that they're in. Okay, maybe they can't broaden their horizon as far as thinking outside the box of their own religion, but maybe that's a step, at least for them, in the right direction to introduce them to the mysticism in their religion that has been lost through dogma. So that's why I like talk about, because I was raised Christian, and like a Christian Baptist fundamentalist, and there are there's these mysticism like hidden treasures in the Bible. Like one of my favorite quotes is or favorite scriptures is the one I was talking about the other day on the radio show. It's like 1 Corinthians chapter 3 verse 16, and it says, "Don't you know that your body is the temple of God, and the Spirit of God dwelleth within you?" That opens up a whole new idea of what it's about, and if people don't grasp that, then there's another one in the scripture that says about the meat and milk, and how you have to. Sometimes the people can just handle the milk; they're not ready to chew on that meat. But it's there, if you want to look for it, it is there. and you can introduce them to the mysticism in their own religion. And you know, if you're more familiar with Islamic or different types of other religions, Catholic, it's still there.
It's got to be in a non-confrontational way, but
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
underlying all these religions that you just spoke of is astrology and anthropomorphization of these characters. And, you know, a lot of that information is encoded, and that's what pisses me off.
Oh yeah. Well, they've done it for a reason, though. They had to
Exactly.
hide it from the people who would have
Yeah.
either changed it, or you know, and they even did. You know, they tried to change it anyway with the different translations and stuff, and was predominantly successful for the most part in keeping the masses to not even look for that, and just be ruled by fear. But that information is there, and it's hidden, and that's the reason why it was hidden, is so it couldn't be touched.
Right.
Also, I was going to say, I was agreeing with a lot of what you're saying, Tony. My dad is a minister. He went through 8 years of divination school at the National Cathedral, and he's not like a lot of other ministers because he is very mystic, and like he didn't start off believing in God. That was something that came later in his life. So he searched for a lot of different meanings. He searched for a lot of different meanings in it, and he didn't bring up the same scripture, but he brings up a lot of the same concepts when he does talk about scriptures with me. It's not about the concrete vision of a man up in the clouds that a lot of Christians, not necessarily a lot of Christians prescribe to, but it doesn't go with a lot of what the major beliefs are. It's something that it's kind of trying to get people to look more into the scriptures. I myself personally don't really like a lot of what the Bible. I myself personally don't like a lot of what the Bible says because of the fact that I know it was written by man and not actually by Jesus Christ. So
The word synchronicity, scripture, the word scripture in particular. I'm going to copy and paste this.
Oh yeah, there's some crazy.
This is from a response to a post that I had posted earlier by a friend of mine, and he quoted scripture to me. This is less than 5 minutes before I joined the hangout. This is interesting.
Oh, I was talking about Proverbs the other night. That is an awesome book. It really is, if you get past it. If you get
It's
down
like a
into
book of incantations. If you know what you're reading.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it really is. Well, yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
and yeah. Hold on.
Go for it.
You know, if King Solomon was the wisest of Egypt, then obviously he kicked it with the Egyptians, you know.
That is very well said, Robert. I love that. That's really cool.
What I don't understand is the people who, like Jenna just said, the book was written by man, okay? So the people who wrote the book are the authorities. They're the establishment at the time. So who are they hiding the information from? Because they don't have to put any real information in their doctrine if they're just using it to control the people. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
And they're hiding the information. So
Yeah.
who
But
are they
I
hiding
think
it from?
Carl Jung said something really interesting about it, and it's just the reason why we have to deal with it is because psychologically it has embedded. It depends. It depends, you know, what if you were raised in on a certain school of thought or whatever, but a lot of people were indoctrinated, so it's still it's still somewhere in their psyche. So one of the great things that Carl Jung said is that there's a healing that comes about if you can find the true teachings in certain parts that are from a place of love that can help you release some of the resentment and anger that you may have towards. And Carl Jung said that. And he said that not for the purpose of following something, but because it has been lodged in your psyche from childhood. This idea of
Very
this
true.
man
Yeah.
with a beard and.
Well, listen, I practiced Wicca for a while, and I still uphold the belief in the religion. I think it's beautiful, and I'll still do some Wiccan rituals when I feel like it. But one thing that happened, like because my mom was in the hospital, I mentioned that it's actually a Catholic hospital. So the doctor asked if it was okay to pray, and he done in Jesus' name, and then thank you for God for, and that's an attitude of gratitude, and I like that. I think that's awesome that had that, and of course he ended it with Amen. But most people don't even know that Amen means so mote it be, which is how you end every Wiccan ritual.
Oh yeah, and in fact, did you guys realize that the same?
Yep.
Yeah, did you get the same phrase Amen in Christianity was the same phrase used in Buddhism. It's called Swaha in Tibetan Buddhism also. When we spoke of a deity or invoke a deity, we always say that at the very end. Or,
what does that mean?
That means so be it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's totally awesome. So basically, you've got 3 different religions that has the same salutation. Or
in Arabic they say kun fayakun.
Go fly cool.
That sounds funny and kind of cool. What is that though?
Which means Allah said be, and it be.
Awesome. See the
Actually,
synchronicity there in different religions. That's beautiful.
It's Genesis.
That's something else that my father had actually brought up, because when you do study Christian religion, you don't just study Christian religion. The degree of divination, theology, you have to study all of the religions. And my dad said that through studying them, he realized that they're all pretty much the same thing with different details. So it's very interesting to think about that. Everybody was searching for this answer. Yeah, everybody's searching for the answers to the same questions, and they all seem to come up with the same
exactly,
answers.
Jen.
Yeah.
Here's something really interesting.
Jen.
But all of these idealisms, all these religions, all these answers that people have come up with, they came up with in completely separate civilizations, completely separate of each other, but they all came up with the same answers. So that kind of leads to believe that the heart of every religion is, in general, the truth, I think.
It's a truth.
If your father...
It's a way that they express the truth, yeah.
If your father's a pastor, then I'm saying when we have to be along the right track. I mean, that just confirms it.
But here's another thing, guys. But something's really interesting.
But the only thing is that's just still one book.
Right.
There's so many books out there.
Right.
I think Jenna, after you get deep enough into religion, like Jenna was. Oh, I'm sorry, Andy. But I was just going to say, after you get deep enough into just any religion, and then you realize that there's a more to it than that, and you study other religions. Eventually, you get into theology and mysticism and metaphysics and the whole order of what's acting behind it, and then I think that eventually leads you to the wisdom, and that to me that wisdom is the hermetics, the keys to wisdom, the 7 universal laws of the universe.
For instance, no, go ahead, Tony.
I'm done. No, I just said universal laws of the universe. I said that's redundant.
I was gonna say there were certain things I just didn't understand certain things at the table or whatever like sometimes my parents would say take your hat off. I'm like, why do I need to take my hat off? And I never understood it. And then I see in Islam in certain places they have the kufi, which specifically is a hat for praying. And I'm like, what's up with this hats off? Hats, I tip my hat off to you, or what's where does this come from?
What's the significance of the hat?
I have not found anywhere that has anything to do with anything that Jesus said or a prophet. I found nowhere where they say anything about taking your hat off.
Alright, guys, here's when Jenna
Has anyone
actually brought up
found anything like that?
I know
I've
one
seen a lot of that when I was in Turkey. Like,
Good, buddy.
seriously, Michael, to confirm what you're talking about, I swear on Islam is a tradition or something. Yeah. They took off your hat all the time.
I think another thing, like place where it came from was when people used to go to church. People, like women, used to wear big giant hats and things like that, and people couldn't see the pastor or see what was going on, so they started restricting hats in church. And I think it's just a tradition that's kept getting passed down to the point where it's just become like etiquette for some families.
What I'm saying is, it's nothing that Jesus supposedly said.
I think it's just etiquette. Southern too. Sounds pretty southern.
That's my thing. Like, if Jesus didn't say it, or Shiva didn't say it, or certain things, that's the thing that I'm actually like cutting that shit out, because I realized I never had to do it in the first place.
Right. Here's
Does that make
more
sense?
things that are. Right, but like, did you guys
I'm
realize
not
there's
saying
some
other people can't do it, but just saying I never had to do it in the first place.
Right, right. But
I
like,
just
here's
did it to
something
be
really
respectful.
awkward. Something's really awkward that if you guys wanted to know about this, about like the ministry that Jenna was talking about, I read up on the news that there's this one time this priest, he applies to being a minister at a church. It's actually Roman Catholic, and somehow like when he preaches those mystical teachings in his church, he actually got like kicked out of the church, and people don't even want him back anymore.
Well, that would be
also-
completely dependent on the congregation.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like Roman Catholic Church. This is
they're
something that
corrupt
I'd
to
never
the
seen
core.
before.
The Roman Catholic Church is corrupt to its very core.
Yeah, that's a pretty dirty
Absolutely.
place.
I do like that they incorporate the angels. That's one of the
They
things
did.
that I think that they.
Yeah, they do that though for selfish reasons. Same with the saints.
Crusades and the Pope's pair and all their insanity is. No.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a very unclean church. There's
You have
no
to
doubt
walk
about that.
backwards. Yep.
You have
I
to
told-
walk
I-
backwards.
I- I told-
There's a Native American story about that.
I told my mom one time, I said I want to go to a place to meditate, and I was pretty much saying like, you know, like a temple or something, like a Buddhist temple. And we're driving, and I'm like, yes, yay, you know, we're going to a temple. She takes me to a Catholic church, and well, the cool thing is that there was nobody there, so I was like, yeah, I guess I could, you know, meditate here, but I just wasn't the energy just didn't feel right.
Right.
You know, and I mean, it's a cool thing because nobody's there. And I looked up out of nowhere, and then I saw I saw an angel, and I looked up out of nowhere, and I saw Archangel Michael. So those were some synchronistic moments, but it just didn't feel like the right place for me.
Well, it's not like all the church is unclean. There are people in
Right.
They're people. You know, that's the key point right there. They're people, and there are some people in the Catholic Church that do have a beautiful heart and do wish to help their fellow man. And it's just whenever you get to the higher ups, and you know the power that's absolute power corrupts absolute, that you really come to that situation where the uncleanliness is. But yeah, there's a lot of Catholic.
Yes,
that
actually, here's the funny thing.
that are really cool.
That's true. Well, actually,
Right, but
I'm cool with like most of them. It's just when they try to debate me in certain things. It's like,
Oh yeah.
peace. Peace.
Oh God. Oh, yeah. But unfortunately, did you realize, guys, like a lot of Catholic priests that actually are just like Jenna's dad, where they preach about mysticism and the deeper side of religion. Like a lot
I would
of
say
them
that
got
more
kicked
so
out.
would be the Gnostics.
Like they were denied. They don't get ordained. They got kicked out of their congregation so on and so forth, while those who like raped thousands of children were promoted or were kept secret from the Roman Catholic Church. I've seen so many of that on the news. Especially like if you guys heard about Mother Teresa recently, like they visit her mission of charity. Half the time they said that she was maltreating the children over there. All of them were given medical treatments that are not ethical. You have no idea what's going on in there.
Well, Mother Teresa is actually a pretty well-known person, and like I said before, and I dislike it strongly saying it, but it's absolutely true. And I'm being redundant by using the word absolutely, but there's a saying, and it says absolute power corrupts absolute. And I don't know of any situation where that's not true, because it just seems like
Tech Nine song.
Yeah, it's also like something. I think it was Kennedy might have said it, but
I think you're right about that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Kennedy, and it has something to do with, once those people get that power, they feel like they make it to it where they're in this self-righteous idea of what they're doing is best for humanity, when really, it only serves them getting more powerful. So it's not really as much about the service of humanity, but they justify it.
Mm. That's what happened in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect analogy. Yeah. That's what happened to Anakin whenever he became Vader.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And it just shows the road that he went. And how power gets, and how, I don't even think that it was anything that Spider-Man had said or anything. I don't know where it came from, but they say, the whole thing, with great power comes great responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, I don't know where I've heard that before either, or who quoted it, but
absolutely true.
It's true. Yep.
I was actually gonna use that line to kind of segue back into something that Andy was asking about previously, about our thoughts about whether or not mysticism and these ideals should be taught in the psychological field. And it's something, because my husband actually is a psychiatric residential counselor. So what he does is he works with psychiatric patients every day, and he went into this field and studied it exclusively. And he agrees that certain parts, like the empathic abilities and building your empathic abilities and using that to enable yourself to be more to work better within your community is one thing. But when you think of the entire envelope of mysticism, that you really, what was that word you used? There's too much room for error. And it's the same thing where you're almost giving people who in the psychological field are there for mental help anyway, you might be giving them too much too quickly, and they could use that, So there's too much room for error in that, and that's something I wanted to kind of turn to, is that idea of, should it be used in a psychological practice?
Well, that's one of the older mystical schools actually had the grading system that they had, the grades. That's where I've said this a couple of times in different hangouts. That's where the word elementary come from, was the elementary grades. They started off, with Earth, so you could learn to ground yourself first before you started working with these abstract aspects of creation, to the point where you can ground yourself and you have a foundation to build upon with the four elements.
Oh yes, exactly, Tony. Here's the funny thing, guys. Did you realize that whenever I go to a psychotherapist on how they deal with your psychological problems, this is what happens, is that they ended up what do you call it? They would first talk to you and try to figure out who you are from the inside. But then whenever, for example, if I were to go to a shaman or someone from the mystery schools, it's a totally different story. Just even right before I came into the room, I already they already told me that they know who I am. I was like, How did that happen?
In that sense, I would almost say that yes, that'd be a good way to get into it. But at the same time, I mean, you're talking about walking up to someone, them saying, you know, I already know who you are, and talking with you about these issues. It's you don't know that person. You don't know you don't know what they're thinking, and you don't necessarily know what energies they're trying to put your way. Because I mean, as much as we all love, and as much as I'd love to instill in other people to be a better person, you don't know what that person's end game is. And one thing that my husband was just saying to me was that's one of the things he meant by, you know, there's so much room for error. Is you're showing people, you're teaching people methods of using their energy in different ways, and you might not even fully understand what the repercussions and negative consequences of that energy would be for that person. So.
Well, one thing, I think people are so willing to help and ready to help, especially when they get into this consciousness awareness shift. But you know, if you don't know how to use a hammer, don't try to build a house.
Right.
Learn how to use a hammer first. You know, and you know, if you finally get down the idea of the hammer, then go to the saw, and then you have to go step by step until you get to the whole idea of how to actually build what you're trying to build. And if you don't have all of the tools available and understood and how they're used, then you're probably not somebody who wants to teach somebody how to build a house.
Why?
Right. Well, yeah. So, do you have any ideas about like mysticism? Because like it seems like you're being a little silent over there, and like I know you're an empath, and I'm also an empath, and a lot of us are. What is your experience with all that? Yeah, I'm also. My friend Michael is an empath also, and several of us here. So, like, how do you deal with spirituality of other people? You know.
I'm a unicorn.
Who are you talking to, Andy?
My girlfriend, Deanna. I'm trying to get her to speak up.
I don't know if she's there or not. Usually whenever, because she likes, I know she just came in, but I don't think she's at the mic.
I heard her voice briefly.
Yeah, same here.
Oh, okay then. Well, yeah, like that's the thing. You know, that's the funny thing, you know, like when we walk into the mystery schools and like we walk into their buildings only, it's not just simply we're feeling like a sense of transcendental like feeling over there. It's like as though we can feel like, oh my God, something else is already there also. You get what I'm talking about?
That kind of goes to like that whole Buddhist philosophy of the teacup, doesn't it? Where you fill up a cup so much full of tea and it won't hold any more, and you have to empty that cup to fill more.
Hey, what are you doing?
Yes, exactly. In fact, that feeling that whatever it is, it's there. Like as though, oh my God, I felt like it's some people, when they walk into a mystery school person, they automatically feel like there's something different. Something extraordinary that I know that I can't comprehend it. Then next thing you know, like, they feel like when they walk into that room, they literally just have no idea what's going on in their mind. They got erased.
Andy, have you listened to Nassim Haramein? Have you studied any of his unified field theory or anything like that?
That is my guy.
I studied what do you call it? The string theory, yeah.
No, not string theory. Unified field theory is what I'm getting at. Is the holofractographic universe.
Hello to
the
you.
structure.
Hello. Welcome to the hangar. Welcome. Hello.
The structure of the universe, the fabric of space-time, and what I think is the energy imprints are what you're feeling. If there is a structure there and we're passing through it or we're part of it, some part of us is going to be left behind. I personally, being around somebody when they passed, I've personally gained knowledge and dispositions that I didn't have before, and I had no explanation for. And when you think about how a star dies and how we originated from stars and how the energy and the information, the matter, is dispersed, it makes sense to me that what you feel when you go into those places is the energy that all of the other people have left behind. I just think it's an it's a collection of energy that's been stored there. It's imprinted in that location.
They're kind of like a tide, or like a surf, or a current maybe would be even a better word for it. And depending on whether that current's good or bad, you know, it leads you toward a good direction or a bad direction. Depends on the type of people that were there.
Right. Exactly. And what I was getting at about the person dying, well, it was my grandfather, and I literally inherited capacities in his trade that I didn't have before, and I had inherited like propensities and callings that I didn't have before, and it was almost immediate, and it was just from being within arm's reach when he passed.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Like, and by the way, guys, like when you going back to the Hermetic principles that we talked about earlier, when I look over what Tony was talking about, like vibrations, how everything is vibration, and how our habits have an impact on it. I recently read an article on neuroplasticity. This is a recent article written by. It's written at the University of California. They made a research where they said that if you were to create a habit, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad, it actually will change your bodily chemistry, including your brain chemistry, and your genes, everything, according to whatever, like, that so-called environment that you're living in. You realize that, right?
Epigenetics.
Yeah,
You're talking about epigenetics.
Yeah, as far as the Hermetics go, that's the cause and effect principle, where you have a causal effect on one plane and it filters down as above, so below into the physical.
Has anybody studied epigenetics here?
I started.
No.
I did.
Not at a place.
Yeah, no, I didn't study at a place either.
No, I haven't even heard of it myself. I've down.
It's the study of how environment affects the genetic structure, or your rather your DNA, and how it codes the proteins. And
you're not actually controlled.
The environment itself shapes your DNA. The epigenetics, your environment can determine how tightly the strands are wound. Like I said, don't have a master's in any of this stuff. It's just a little bit of research here and there. But what it boiled down to was the effect environment has, the effect environment has proven to have on your DNA, and they
get into that.
The empirical evidence that they have to prove it was in I think it was northern Russia, Nova Scotia, northern Russia. No, it was the Dutch hunger crisis is what it was, and there was a segregated population, and they had seasons where they had horrible crops, and so they would store their food, and then they had seasons where they had plentiful crops, and they would gorge themselves. But they had more seasons where they had to ration, and so they had to store more calories. And so 100 years later, or however long, those people can be traced now, and they're all have a propensity or predisposition to obesity. The environment affected their DNA in utero.
Okay, yeah, I have heard about that actually, but I didn't know that's what it was called.
Yes, I heard about that. And in fact, did you realize
on top of genetics, epigenetics on top of
Robert, the same.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. They get into that in the documentary called Chromatica. Does anybody watch that? Chromatica?
Cymatica, yeah.
That is
Chromatica. You can find it on YouTube.
What about it?
There's a guy there. He's scientist, a quantum physicist, and he's figuring out. He has like a petri dish, and he's putting these different cells in a petri dish, and he's saying that, well, what he used to believe and what he was told is that genes pretty much control a human. You know, their body, their phenotype, everything. The genes basically control. And what he learned from the experiment is that the genes were saying that genes don't control life; they respond to life.
Right. And that's evolution, right? Is it not?
Yeah, in
Defined?
fact,
Epigenetics,
Guys,
or
you
another one they said is neurogenesis.
Neurogenesis, yeah.
It's basically, you know, Genesis, but with the neuro.
Right.
right, but like, here's the funny thing, guys. Did you guys realize that
Also
when you brought up
neuroplasticity.
that? Yeah, like, here's the thing, Michael. Did you realize that a couple of weeks ago, I found out that some people, group of scientists in neuropsychology, they found out that autism, it's like this very prevalent form of neurological disorder nowadays our world have. Like, that is ridiculous how just by giving them a hug or something, it actually not only teaches these kids about love, but also it helps them to learn to generate love all by themselves, and eventually it can be to the point where they can correct their so-called problems, you know? Like, some of them actually found out, like, just because they learn how to just change their diet and learn how to live out love, they literally gone from being autistic to being normal. It's so weird.
Take it easy, Sherman.
Any ideas about this?
Much love,
I'll
man.
talk to you later, darling.
Good night, you guys. Namaste, everyone. I will talk to you guys later.
Peace.
Oh, here's the show again if you want to know. So yeah, any of you guys have any questions or any comments about like medical problems and all this stuff going on?
I thought we were
around
talking
in
about
our-
mysticism.
Well, medicine is also part of mysticism too. You know, we used to have that tradition where mystical monks, or even from mystical schools, they literally heal every single person that came to them. It only took like one session to actually heal them. It's weird.
That's
But, like,
interesting.
that's the thing. Like, what did they do? How did they do it? In such a way that if you were to come to them, you almost like as though you have drank a magical pill and then you all of a sudden you got healed. You know, it's weird.
Are you talking about potions?
More than potions. I'm talking about like if they were to set an intention to heal you, you already healed. It's funny.
Yeah.
Well, if you... Oh, go ahead, Michael.
Go ahead, Tony.
I was just going to say, if you consider, like, since my ancestry is Native American, one thing that's what not only the shaman was in the tribe. He wasn't only like the spiritual messenger, but he was, you know, and some people or some tribes call them the medicine men, because that's what they did. Is they had good knowledge of herbs. And I'm just building on what you were saying, Andy, that mysticism, that he kept the mysteries of those plants and used those, and he had all the information available through basically being taught by his mentor, and so on in an oral tradition on what these plants were, by the whole thing of actually taking his initiate, his student, or the protege, whatever you want to call it, into the woods and show them what herbs they were, and tell them what they were called and what they did and how they could be used. Now, that is the basis of herbalism, and herbalism is the basis for like how medicine came to be. But it didn't just come from Native Americans. Yeah, so it didn't just come from Native Americans, of course. So there's other societies throughout the world that did the same thing with the medicines that they had available at the time, or the herbs that they had available at that particular area to address a certain situation.
Oh yeah, like
and also sometimes they talk to the plants to see which ones were appropriate for whatever they needed healing with.
yeah, Jenna.
That's quite possible, Michael. I really don't know. I can't say for sure.
Yeah, I
That's what
yeah, seriously. I actually.
He said the plants talk to him.
Well, Jenna.
That's awesome.
Did anybody hear about George Washington Carver?
I've heard of
He's
the
the
name.
Right.
He's the one that made peanuts and
peanut butter or something like that.
No, he found a lot more than just peanut. He found
he got
like over 100 different uses for peanuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually just gonna say,
Jenna.
I know that the native culture. I know a lot of the modern native culture is unfortunately been decimated by what happened throughout history. But I happen to know a lot of natives. My husband actually is Métis, which his father is Cree and lives on the reservation, and they don't necessarily practice a lot of the same medical practices anymore, whereas the Chinese culture, I know, like Sherman just got back from a trip to China where he was studying a lot of this holistic medicine. So I was kind of just wondering, like, when you were asking Andy about going in somewhere and just automatically being healed, were you asking about like in the past, or were you asking if you think it's something we could do in the future?
Well, it's both. It's like by learning how it works in the past, we also can use it back in the future, because there are things that we have forgotten and that is so effective that next thing you know, like, we have no idea it is. It has been used for a long, long time already and has like a history of records of doing it effectively.
Mm-hmm. They said that a guru, if his aura field was long enough, if it extended to at least a mile, and people just had to be near the energetic field of the guru or the yogi or the rishi or whoever, and they would be instantly healed just by being in their field.
Just by resonating with it.
Oh yeah, and like
resonating, like basically coming in tune with that same vibration.
The same vibration, right?
Yeah.
Because the energetic field is much higher than the other person, and probably are the emotions and thoughts and the field of the other person. So what happens is it kind of just shifts their vibration by being in contact with that being.
Yeah.
Now I pose another question. For those people that were healed by that, would you think that that was just the healer, or I almost think that that would also be because the people themselves had the belief that they would be healed by that person, and that helped them to heal themselves, because they in their own consciousness were thinking that they were about to be healed, and so by thinking it, maybe they let it happen.
That really is a good question.
So, yeah.
But what I would say is it's not as much belief. I think it has to do with doubt, because doubt gets in the way. It's not as much belief. If you let it happen, you let it happen. But if you're doubting it, then you're fighting it. So yeah, I don't think it's as much as belief as it is, the doubt fighting it off. So whenever they go up there and they're open about it, you don't necessarily have to believe it, but you're at least open to the possibility. Then yeah, it would change the vibration. But if you have doubts about it, that's going to fight off that.
If you practice qigong, and like this lady asked me when I was at the qigong place, and she's like, I don't know if this whole thing with qigong and qi and energy is real. And I was like, well, I mean, what do you think about gravity? She said, oh yeah, I know gravity exists. I was like, do you? And she's like, oh yeah, gravity, if you drop something, it falls. It's an invisible force. It's invisible.
I'm glad you called because I was going to call you, but yeah, I didn't want to go into detail about it. Hold on a second, let me mute my mic.
Oh. But I was saying, well, it's the same thing about the chi, that, you know, it doesn't really matter if you believe it or not. If you do the practices, the electromagnetic energy is there. So, I mean, now doubting it can delay the process in a sense, but if you're doing the practices, the energy's still there. It's just whether you realize it or not, or are able to sensitize, to be sensitive in a way that you're able to feel the electromagnetic energy. So basically, yeah. Now, quantum
like
physics
going back to
is
what
getting,
Jenna was talking about when it comes to magic and everything.
I was going to
but like
answer
here's the
question you
thing.
were saying about feng shui and Reiki, just as a small thing. Like, I do believe in Reiki healing and feng shui and things like that. I haven't looked into it to see the details and how, you know, the energy works, but I know I actually had a Reiki treatment from a friend of me in Sherman's a couple of years ago that was definitely enlightening and very interesting for me. So, keep going.
oh wow.
Yeah, like think about it. There's more to feng shui and like energy healing than just simply, oh, we're gonna just heal your energy. Just going back to what Tony was talking about, like the principle of hermeticism. When you're manipulating the surroundings on the great macrocosm, you're not just manipulating whatever's out there. You're also manipulating something within you when you're doing it. It's like you're doing it to yourself, you know. So that's the thing. Like, what? Like, did you realize, like, when you walk into some places, you notice how you start feeling, like Catholic. You know, when I walk into a church, half the time I felt like I want to throw up because their feng shui is somewhat messed up, right? You realize that? But if you were to go to a Buddhist temple, for example, it's a different story.
Well, no, I was just going to say you asked that, but like I said, I don't actually, I understand when I go into a church, I get that weird feeling, but I can't attune it to feng shui because I don't really know what the feng shui of that building is because I don't know the details of that, you know.
True.
Yeah.
Right, but you know that there is an imprint somewhere in there, regardless of whether or not is it feng shui or something else. But it's there. You notice it.
Yes.
Even if it's good, I found out that half the time it's because of the fact that people are just there for somewhat popularity, or they have to be there.
That could be true too. In certain places, but in a Buddhist temple, what do you feel is the difference between the Buddhist temple and the church?
All right. Well, think about it. When I go to a Buddhist temple, it's a totally different story when I walk into a church. When I first walk into a Buddhist temple, it's almost like as though I felt like it's home. Versus if I were to go to the church, I felt like I'm going to work. Like, if you guys know what the workplace looked like, the church looked like that. It's like you're not welcome there.
Oh, wow. Well, I don't feel about that in my work, but...
yeah, but
I understand
unfortunately,
what you
there
mean.
are some workplaces that are ridiculous. Yeah, some people don't like going to work, and that's one of the reasons is because they don't feel welcome there. But, like, that's the thing, guys. Like, before I had to end the broadcast, is that the thing is like, we all know that on the essence that everything is not hidden. Everything is obvious to all of us that know in some way or the other. We're, like, if you were to look at the principle, it's all just some people are more observant than others. That's all. That's why they can be able to understand these stuff. But the only question is,
what can you do about it once you already know? So if any of you audience out there who want to tune into the shows on the future, just click on the subscribe button and see if you can get more updates on what's going on our end.